What if I told you the toughest truck in America is about to get even more unstoppable? Let's face it, there's only so much a regular pickup truck can do. Once you need a true, tried and tested workhorse, nothing but a heavy-duty pickup truck will suffice. And out of all of them, there's simply no substitute for the phenomenal Ford Super Duty lineup. However, believe it or not, Ford just made its Super Duty even better for the upcoming model year, improving it in virtually every way possible. So with that in mind, let's take a deep dive into the 4 key reasons why you should wait for the 2026 Ford Super Duty. Number 4. Improved capabilities. One of the key reasons why people tend to adore the Ford Super Duty
horizontal
is because
arrangement
of its
like the
sheer
Ford Ranger
capability.
and
When
other
spec'd
Ford
out
vehicles.
correctly, the
It will be
F450
easier to
Super
use
Duty
and
can
more
tow up to
aesthetically pleasing with this
40,000
new
lbs,
design.
which is truly
In addition,
monstrous and the best in its class. This is thanks to its diesel 6.7L V8 engine, which puts out a whopping 500 horsepower and an unbelievable 1,200 lb-ft of torque, making it ideal for virtually any chore you throw at it, from pulling down your neighbor's house to kick-starting the world if it ever stops spinning. Well, we're glad to announce that the 2026 model year will come with an even greater performance sheet, as the 6.7-liter will now push out even greater power and torque figures. First of all, the previously maximum 500 horsepower will be bumped up to a whopping 520 horsepower. Sure, it might not seem like a lot. However, with this horsepower increase will also come a major torque jump, from 1,200 lb-ft to a whopping 1,350 lb-oft. As a result, the truck will now be able to tow up to 45,000 lbs, albeit not more than that. The 500 horsepower unit will replace the now standard 475 horsepower version, which is noticeably less capable than its high-output sibling. However, if you're not a fan of oil burners, don't worry, as even the gasoline options will come with upgraded performance figures, starting with a base 6.8L V8 engine. Boy, oh boy, is it strange to call a 6.8L a base model engine? Anyhow, this small giant of an engine will now push out around 430 horsepower, a 25 horsepower increase over its current iteration. Apart from that, torque figures will also rise to a very respectable 480 lb-ft, making it more or less on par with the larger 7.3L. Speaking of the 7.3L engine, that monstrosity will also get an upgrade, and it will now push out around 480 horsepower and over 500 lb-ft of torque, making it one of the torquest naturally aspirated engines in existence. And if that wasn't enough, there's also been mention of a high-output version that'll push more than 500 horsepower and 550 lb-ft of torque, though Ford has yet to confirm this. All of these power plants will be mated to the well-known 10-speed automatic gearbox, ensuring constant torque and power delivery, and an engine that'll feel alive and in the power band constantly. Ford also promised to tweak it further to increase smoothness while shifting and make it more responsive and direct for better performance. Number 3. The Super Duty receives a much-needed facelift. There's no denying that the Ford Super Duty lineup looks both incredibly good and incredibly menacing. Honestly, the versatility and neutrality of its looks are what, in our opinion, make it more appealing than the Silverado and Ram heavy-duty pickup trucks. Honestly, just look at the F450. It looks like it can swallow the world, with a level of class and elegance that is simply uncanny. However, we have to be honest, the Super Duty's styling neutrality is becoming a bit too much for us, as the truck is starting to look a bit bland, especially after the F150's recent redesign. So to compensate for this issue, Ford has redesigned the Super Duty for the 2026 model year to help it stand out from its smaller brother better than it does now. First of all, the biggest change will be noticed at the front. The 2026 version of the Super Duty will boast a new grille design that'll be much less busy than the current one. This will be complemented by a central DRL bar, which will be positioned above the grille and will be very reminiscent of the front end found on the F-150 Lightning. The DRLs and the headlights will also be shaped into a line that lines up perfectly with the central bar, creating a modern, seamless, and aesthetically pleasing, yet clean and elegant front end. Speaking of the front headlights, they will be a tad bulkier than the current iteration, so they can better convey the sheer enormity of the truck itself. Apart from the front end, you can expect changes to the side profile too. The sides will be less cluttered with unnecessary trim. This cleaner look will give the truck a much more no-nonsense, business-minded appearance that it deserves. Finally, the back of the truck will remain mostly unchanged, but we actually prefer it that way, as the rear was already looking pretty sharp. The only real change we could expect is a reduction in chrome usage, which holds true for the entirety of the truck. This is definitely for the better, as the Super Duty, especially the Lariat trim, does tend to look a bit too flashy for its own good. Number 2. Flex Fuel is finally being introduced. Here's something quite a lot of people have been waiting for. Honestly, we were all struck with disbelief that Ford decided not to grant the Super Duty its flex fuel system. This is, after all, a truck marketed as a no-nonsense, no-compromise utilitarian vehicle, which made it all the more confusing. Why Ford didn't give us the option of filling it up with E80 fuel when regular gasoline wasn't available. What made it even more puzzling was that this option was offered on the previous generation with the 6.2L V8. Finally though, Ford has decided to grant us our long-lasting wish, and the Super Duty will now truly become the no-compromise vehicle it always presented itself as. That said, there will only be one powertrain on offer, and that'll be the larger 7.3L V8 engine. This is because there's little to no logic in adapting the entry-level 6.8L to flex fuel. After all, most people who need this feature likely won't be looking for the cheapest version of the truck anyway. Now, we don't expect this powertrain to make up the majority of Super Duty sales. However, we're glad Ford decided to listen to its fan base for once. Number 1. A much better cabin design. The exterior isn't the only thing going through a redesign though. Apart from that, we can also expect a massive cabin overhaul. This, in our opinion, is going to be an even bigger change, and one that's even more urgent than the styling department. You see, even though the Ford Super Duty already has a pretty good interior, it simply cannot hold a candle to the Ram 2500 and 3500, which is one of the key reasons said truck has been eating into the Blue Oval's truck sales. Plus, we challenge you to spot the difference between it and the F-150. They look virtually identical. Well, that's about to change now, as the facelifted Super Duty will up its game and blow past its Ram competitors in terms of design and tech, while also matching it in quality. First of all, you can say goodbye to that cluttered mess of a center console. All those unnecessary buttons will be removed. Climate controls will remain, and so will the heated and cooled seat controls. However, the rest of the commands will be transferred to the infotainment system. Speaking of the infotainment screen, it too will undergo a major redesign, taking on a horizontal layout similar to the Ford Ranger and a lot of other Ford products. This layout will make it easier to access and much clearer to look at. Furthermore, the layout and the system itself will be far more intuitive to use compared to Ram's offering, thanks to being far more logically laid out. The quality of the interior will now be top-notch too, especially on the upper trims of the pickup truck. Virtually everything will now be covered in leather, and all the trim pieces will be finished in wood or aluminum, giving the cabin a very luxurious accent. Finally, the seats, which were fantastic from the get-go, will be even better now. Padded further to make them softer and more comfortable than the current ones, bringing them up to par with Ram's fabulous seats. All in all, the Ford Super Duty will once again secure its spot as the top dog of the segment, as it should, and That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.